$881 million. Prosecutors put that figure as a floor under what was laundered through HSBC Bank USA, undetected. It started at a counter, a cardboard box, cut to the exact dimensions of a bank teller window, going through the gap. A branch in Mexico. An ordinary weekday, an ordinary queue, an ordinary counter. A man reaches the front carrying that box, wrong proportions for holding anything, because it was never built to hold anything. Somebody had measured a teller window and built cardboard to those measurements. It slides through the gap like it was machined for it. Then the next one goes through, and the one after that. Drug money, including proceeds from the Sinaloa Cartel in Mexico and the Norte del Valle Cartel in Colombia. Nobody flagged it. Nobody stopped it. Two threads to hold on to tonight. The first is how a bank that size does not see cash arriving in custom-cut boxes. The second is what happened to the people responsible once all of it was laid out on a table in Washington. Both come back before this file closes. Start with what transaction monitoring actually is, smaller and more boring than people expect. A bank cannot look at everything. Over 4 years, HSBC Bank USA processed more than 100 million wire transfers, over $300 trillion in value. No system reads that. So a bank decides where to look, and it decides in advance. HSBC decided by sorting every country on Earth into one of 4 boxes: standard, medium, cautionary, high. That is straight out of the Justice Department's statement of facts. Lowest risk to highest. I want to be precise about what a rating like that is, because it is the whole case. A country risk rating describes a decision, not a country. It sets where you are willing to look. Everything downstream flows from that one field. The alerts, the reviews, the reports filed to the government. Mexico sat in the lowest box, standard. The Justice Department dates that from at least 2006. FinCEN, the Treasury's Financial Crimes Unit, dates it from 2002. Either way, it held until May of 2009, and it held while the evidence piled up on the other side. The State Department had designated Mexico a jurisdiction of primary concern for money laundering. That was March 2000. FinCEN issued its own advisory in April 2006. None of it moved the field. Staffing tells the same story. The Senate found the bank had more than 16,500 employees. Its entire compliance department was under 200 people. The desk that handled physical cash shipments had 1 compliance officer, sometimes 2. Between them, they were responsible for personally reviewing the transactions of 500 to 600 customers. In 2007, a cost program froze headcount. The Senate found the freeze left compliance's staffing requests denied or simply unanswered. Hold that ratio. It produces a number at a Senate hearing 5 years later that is worse than any dollar figure in this file. So here is the machine, 1 arrow at a time. This is the map investigators used to explain it afterwards. It is not a blueprint, and there is nothing in it anyone could run. Step 1. Placement. Cash is the hardest part of any laundering operation, and it is hardest at the beginning. Drug sales produce paper money in volumes that are genuinely difficult to move. It has to enter the banking system somewhere, and the somewhere is always a counter, a teller, and a person handing something over, prosecutors said, and the bank did not contest what that looked like. Traffickers were depositing hundreds of thousands of dollars in bulk currency into HSBC Mexico accounts every day. And to move that volume efficiently through the teller windows, they designed specially shaped boxes cut to the precise dimensions of those windows. That is the government's own wording. Somebody sat down with a tape measure, and the Justice Department wrote it down. Step 2. The affiliate transfer. Once the dollars are inside the Mexican bank, they have to reach America. There is a legitimate business that does exactly that. It is called banknotes, physical currency, sold bank to bank, shipped in bulk, perfectly normal. For this one channel, the Justice Department's figure is specific. Over $9.4 billion in physical U.S. currency bought from HSBC Mexico between July 2006 and December 2008. over 4.1 billion of it in 2008 alone. More than 1.1 billion came out of Sinaloa state. Culiacan, as the statement of facts notes, is home to the Sinaloa Cartel. Step 3. Layering through trade. This technique has a name investigators have used for decades: the black market peso exchange. In plain English, a currency swap that never crosses a border. Per the statement of facts, peso brokers took those dollars and wired them to exporters in New York and elsewhere in the United States. The exporters bought goods for Colombian businesses. The goods ship south, the businesses pay in pesos locally. The trafficker receives clean local currency, the broker takes a cut, and no suspicious wire crosses a border with a name on it. What the bank sees is a garment wholesaler in New York being paid for garments. The last stage has a name too: integration. The point where dirty money becomes ordinary money, in a currency its owner can spend. Underneath all three steps sits a fourth thing, and it is an absence rather than a step. Because Mexico was rated standard, wire transfers originating there were generally not reviewed poorly, not reviewed late. As a rule, not reviewed at all. When I worked monitoring, we used to say the alert you never generate is the one nobody ever investigates. This is that sentence, at the scale of a country, for at least 3 years. On Fenson's dating of the rating, closer to 7. Now the flaw. That box is almost the least interesting object in this file. It went through a window in daylight, in public, in front of staff. Nothing about it was hidden. Hiding was never the plan, because it never had to be. Here is the turn. The systems built to catch exactly this did not fail. They were never switched on. And switching a system off leaves a perfect record of exactly what you switched off. The bank's monitoring excluded the Mexican wires by rule, according to a setting somebody had entered. A rule that excludes things has to identify what it is excluding, so it counted them. Every single one, which is why the Justice Department could later count them, not estimate them. From 2006 until the rating was finally raised in May 2009, over 316,000 transactions were excluded from monitoring, worth over $670 billion from HSBC Mexico alone. Hold those two numbers apart because people mix them constantly. At least 881 million is what prosecutors say was laundered through the American bank. 670 billion is what nobody looked at. The first is a crime. The second is the room the crime had to work in. The Justice Department ran the same arithmetic across the whole system. Over $200 trillion in wire transfers, unreviewed, in 4 years. A bank that had merely been sloppy would have left nothing to count. This one left a complete itemized inventory of its own blind spot. Meanwhile, the warnings were arriving by hand. The statement of facts records what HSBC Mexico's own chief executive was told. Mexican law enforcement had a recording of a drug lord saying HSBC Mexico was the place to launder money. The regulator's own examiners had gone through what the bank was and was not monitoring. Their finding is recorded in the Senate's case history: more than $60 trillion of wire transfers a year, going unreviewed, for customers in countries rated standard or medium. 2/3 of everything the bank moved, which is the 200 trillion from a moment ago, counted a second way, by a different regulator. Those findings reached a United States Senate subcommittee, July 17, 2012. It publishes a case history and holds a hearing. Its findings are unusually blunt for a congressional document: long-standing, severe anti-money laundering deficiencies, a dysfunctional monitoring system, inappropriate country and client risk assessments, and then the number the staffing ratio was always going to produce. 17,000 unreviewed alerts. 17,000 times the bank's own systems raised a hand and said this looks wrong. 17,000 times nobody came. Senate investigators also found something the American side of the bank appears not to have known about. Its Mexican affiliate ran a branch registered in the Cayman Islands. No office there, no employees there, run out of Mexico City. At its peak in September 2008, it held over 60,000 accounts, and assets approaching $2.1 billion. An estimated 15% of them had no customer identification information at all. At the witness table, the bank's head of group compliance explained much of the preceding decade in a few sentences. His mandate, he testified, had been limited to advising, recommending, and reporting. Ensuring the group's affiliates followed the group's own standards had never been his job. He did not have the authority, the resources, or the infrastructure. Then, at the end of that same statement, he recommended the group find someone new for his job. 5 months later, on December 11th, 2012, the Justice Department filed a 4-count criminal information in the Eastern District of New York. With it came a deferred prosecution agreement. The bank forfeited $1.256 billion. A further $665 million went in civil penalties to the controller of the currency and the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve put the total at approximately $1.9 billion. Which brings us to the second thread and the coldest part of this file. The criminal information lists its defendants on the first page. There are two: HSBC Bank USA and HSBC Holdings. Both of them are companies. Not one individual was criminally charged. One personal consequence appears in the primary record, and it is financial. The bank clawed back deferred compensation from a number of senior compliance officers. That included the chief compliance officer, the anti-money-laundering director, and the chief executive. Bonuses. That is the list. And look at the shape of the penalty. Roughly $1.9 billion against at least $881 million the government says was laundered, about twice the laundered sum, and roughly 0.3% of the $670 billion nobody reviewed. For years, why nobody was charged was speculation. Then a congressional investigation subpoenaed the internal record and published it in 2016. An internal Treasury email from September 2012 records that the Justice Department was, in its words, very strongly considering a prosecution. But that senior leaders wanted to better understand the collateral consequences before taking such a dramatic step. The same email records British regulators calling HSBC the second most systemically important bank in the world. Even the threat of revoking its American charter, they said, could result in a global financial disaster. That same month, Britain's finance minister had written to the chairman of the Federal Reserve, copying the U.S. Treasury Secretary. That congressional report says the letter warned of contagion, of very serious implications for financial stability in Europe and Asia. I want to be careful here, because this is where coverage of this case usually overreaches. Those are documents obtained by one committee's staff, and the characterizations are theirs. The same report states plainly what was never conceded. The Justice Department has never admitted it declined to prosecute because of the effect on the financial system. The agreement ran 5 years, with an independent compliance monitor appointed for a period of up to 5 years. The government determined that the bank had complied. On December 12, 2017, it moved to dismiss, and a federal judge dismissed the criminal information with prejudice. The case ended with no conviction and no criminal record for either company. So what does this one teach a person who watches for a living? This: a risk rating is made in advance by people who will not be the ones doing the looking. Change one field from high to standard, and an entire country goes invisible to you. In writing, and every place you decide not to look gets written down as a place you were not looking. $670 billion is not an estimate, it is an inventory. The boxes were the visible part. Cardboard, in daylight, in front of everybody. The setting on the other side of the glass was the part nobody was watching. If this was useful, hit like and subscribe for the next case file. That genuinely helps this channel reach the people who need to see how this works. Case closed. Follow the money. Run, Homan.